Mimarca programı Mimarlar Odası'nın katkılarıyla yayınlanmaktadır.
Marco, what do you like most in this village?
Yeah, the building stock of traditional or vernacular architecture in its entirety. That's very fascinating for me as an architectural historian.
What was your first visit? Which year was it when you visited this village first?
Yeah, it must have been 2012 when a colleague of mine, Sevin Shkurt, invited me to join a project about this village. And between 2012 and 2015 I've been here on a regular basis, let's say. So I know many of the courtyard houses or courtyard complexes. And then this complex which attracted me specifically, the old Han, which is actually, this one is not the Han proper. This is an old coffee house, but is part of the Han complex, which is basically here behind, and we see it also a little bit on that side, the accommodation part of the Han. This is also actually the oldest part that we could, let's say, recover concerning its date. Inside there's a column capital, like one of those, carrying a double arch, and there's a date 1882 on it. So that's the oldest date that we can recover. Apart from this, we have some information from maps of the British period from 1916 and 1967. So this is the way how we worked on it.
Yeah. Starting from 2012 to 2022, do you agree with me? Many things have changed.
Actually, I would have to see it now in detail again. I haven't been here for 6-7 years. I see that some of the plaster that was done not by us before our project has already deteriorated on that side, came off the wall. So actually I cannot directly answer this question.
All right.
From outside around the corner, it looked quite all right as I remember it. Yeah.
Okay, Luricina is the center of trade, I guess, between Larnaca and Nicosia during historical period of time, or it's the passage.
I wouldn't say that it's a center, but it's definitely a stopover for travelers that came from Larnaca to Nicosia or vice versa, also to Dalle, which is not so far away from here. So, I mean, in a time when motorization didn't exist yet, travel by horsepower or camel power, and Luricina is somehow in the middle between Larnaca and Nicosia. And the Hans were a traditional building type at the time, not only in Luricina, in many villages, in the bigger towns, where travelers, traders found short-term accommodation, were able to store their wagons, chariots, and their goods. So they're actually an important building type for the understanding of social economic life in Cyprus in the past. What we know today, basically, we remember, or we think of the Büyük Han in Nicosia, maybe not, the Communacele Han. But then, when you think of where are Hans, we don't know many of them, because they have vanished from our consciousness, because most of these Hans were not, as we'd say, sophisticatedly built with ashlar material, with decorative details like columns and arches, like the two in Nicosia, which follow an Anatolian type with a central courtyard surrounded by arched porticos. But most of the Hans were more inconspicuous, more plain, like this one. Mm-hmm. But also in other villages you would find these. So therefore they have not been seen as architectural monuments. They have not been protected. Often they are also in private ownership, which is another problem. So many of them...
And maybe the biggest problem.
Yeah, maybe. Many of them vanished without records. One exception is a good example in Kalebonu. But after that, not too many have survived. So, for example, in Nicosia, in the center, in this historical commercial area between Famagusta Gate and Paphos Gate, there is the Büyük Han, there is the Communacele Han, but there were almost 20 more Hans of a plainer, more simple type, like this one, and also many of them have vanished. But they are important because they would be used by Greeks and Turks alike, so they would come together there. They would trade, they would communicate, share information. So these were, they were certain hubs of social interaction, which now, have vanished. Most of them.
Which is upsetting.
Yeah. Two reasons. First of all, the emergence of new hotel types that slowly started with the British period. I mean, the European, let's say, type of hotel. And the other thing, more important maybe, is motorization. In the first half of the 20th century it begins, and about the mid-20th century it was already so strong that probably it was not so necessary anymore to have a stopover, for example, between Larnaca and Nicosia, because you would be able to take a village bus and arrive to Nicosia in a meaningful time. You would maybe then go to a Han still in Nicosia or stay in a hotel there and then return on the next day. So you would not need a Han midway anymore. So this is two of the reasons why Hans and villages began to disappear.
Yeah. How important was Luricina in this sense?
This is something that I cannot 100% answer. Actually, the more direct road to Nicosia from Larnaca is the road that passes Athienu. So Luricina is actually on a lateral road, which follows, by the way, also ancient Roman tracks, as far as I remember. So it's more actually on the way to Dalle, but let's say my assumption is it was here maybe cheaper also to stay than on the main road. Yeah?
Yes.
So that could be a reason, but I mean, it's definitely a large village in this area between Larnaca and Nicosia. So it is maybe not as important as Athenu, or was not as important as Athenu, but similar.
Yeah. Is this the main entrance?
Yeah, this is where the chariots entered, the animals.
Such a huge gate.
Yeah, with also a certain representativeness, no? With these ashlar stones as the frame of the door, while on the sides we have a little bit more, also partially ashlar stone and mud brick at the top.
Yeah.
This is building A in our investigation. We have named it A in order to understand and investigate building phases, how building A relates to other buildings of this complex, and to better understand the history of the complex from the 19th to the 20th century. So there we found building phases. So this building has also at least two phases. However, what we see here is mainly one phase. Of course, during the construction period, we can see already there is a change. There was original window plan, which has not been realized.
Yeah.
Instead, it has been filled then with mud brick. One further indication, apart from the date 1882, that this is basically a building at the beginning of the British period, is the standardized sizes of the mud bricks, which here are 30 centimeters by 45 centimeters and 5 centimeter thickness. So this is 1 feet, 1.5 feet, 2 inches, and this is a standard, let's say, British size.
Oh.
One of two that are usual in Cyprus at the time.
This is the passage to courtyard.
To the courtyard, which lies behind here.
Yes. Let's go and have a look.
Yes, let's have a look.
Are we in the courtyard?
Not quite. We are actually now outside of the Han. As you see, there's a lot of debris. Right behind us, there was another one-story building, which we also have tried to follow with a, let's say, small-sized excavation. So where you see this wall there, this is where the Han begins to that side. And the building that was right behind us was actually part of a second phase that is related also with the filling of these two pointed arches in the back. See, the two right arches here were filled with mud brick in relation to the construction of a building that was then reaching until here. So somehow there was a change in usage in relation to this entrance building, which we have defined as a hall for the chariots and for, let's say, animals, traded goods or transported goods. But the left arch that we can see, that was still open. So the entrance was still working to the courtyard.
Yeah.
So the courtyard was then behind this building that extended behind our backs. Yeah.
I have two important questions. The first one is the material of this Han, and the second, how many different buildings were there in this complex?
Yeah, I mean, I start with the second part of the question. We counted from A to F, yes. So we defined, when documenting it, certain buildings, naming them with letters.
Yeah.
So from
6 types.
So from A to F, A is here this entrance hall, the entrance building, quite typical part of Han architecture, as we found out. G is that coffee house that we have seen previously from the front side.
Yeah, which is looking to the center of the village.
To the center of the village, but it has an access on the rear side to the courtyard of the Han. And F were the parts for accommodation and possibly also the building parts that we have called A here in the rear, which had been part of a restoration before 2012.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, material is ashlar stone for very prominent parts of the architecture, meaning door frames, the frame of the gate as we have seen it outside. But mainly it's of course rubble stone in the lower parts of the elevation of a wall, and in the upper parts it is then adobe or mud brick. And as I have already mentioned before, there are some standardized sizes for the mud brick.
Yes.
So this is the typical vernacular material here in Cyprus.
And especially we are in Messaouria area, region, so these are the materials that can be easily found.
Yes, I mean this is
from the nature.
Yes, I mean there's differences in the regions of Cyprus as to the usage of stone, the extent of the usage of stone, because this has something to do with the availability, of course. But let's say roughly or in general, these are the materials. Ashlar stone for certain specific parts, rubble stone for the lower parts, foundations also. So there's also a possibility that only the foundation, which is more or less almost under the soil, is built in rubble stone, and the upper part of the elevation is then built in mud brick completely. Also this one exists.
Marco, what makes this Han special?
Special is that it is there. No? Yes. That is still there.
Still there,
to some extent. That we have a example that we can document, because many other examples vanished without records, without documentation. Some of them survive maybe in a cadastral map. So in Nicosia, there are some examples that are basically completely vanished, but in the old British maps we can see them with the term Han.
But
yeah, so I mean this is the value of this building, although it is very deteriorated. And part of our project was actually also to make people aware of this heritage, to try to protect it if possible. If that's not possible because of financial reasons, to document as much as possible so that we don't lose this heritage. No? I mean, the best thing would be not to lose it physically, but at least we shouldn't lose it in terms of documentation. No? And yeah, here it's critical. Yes. We will see this, I think, in the next scene, the most critical parts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is this the courtyard?
Yeah, finally we arrived to the courtyard. We are in the middle of it, between building B, yes, that is part of the second phase, partially closing off the building A that we have seen before. So then we have here building G. This is the coffee house. From the back side, you see there's a difference between what we have seen before, yes, deterioration. Then we have here building F, and this is the old part of the accommodation for the travelers. Basically, we see the first floor still a little bit where the rooms had been, and well, there's a lot of collapse, damage, because there was a wall here during the time of our project. Even there was a sign of a door for this first floor, which probably was connected to the ground here with a staircase. Staircase here in this corner, probably a wooden material. So all this is further damage in the last years. And this building here.
What about animals?
Yeah, animals here.
Yeah.
This is, forgot the letter number now. This has been already, through oral history, been identified as a horse stable. But we have found also proof of it, because in the rear there was a lot of debris again, and we cleared it, and we found a longer bench,
yes,
maybe of that height, with regular compartments, which served as places for
food.
For food, yes.
Yeah.
So interestingly, this might have been also a little bit related with accommodation, because this was in the past very usual that people lived under one roof with their animals. Animals in one part, people in the other part, usually separated either by a central entrance or separated by a dividing arch. So here we have also originally a dividing arch from one side to the other side.
Yeah. And my final question is, what can we do for this Han? How can we save it?
Yeah, that's almost, question impossible to answer. The first step is making people aware of it through documentation. This is what we did. Now, because of course it's in private hand, a project had to be developed with financial support from bodies that everybody knows are active in Cyprus, but this hasn't been done yet. This was not my, let's say, intention to do, but this would be worth it, to at least conserve the present already bad situation.
Yeah, but there is something they can do.
Yes, it is possible to do.
Because it's still alive.
Yeah, it is still alive. And the restoration that had been done in the past basically concentrated on the beautification of the facade of the Han buildings towards the main square of the village, but not on the rear side.
Yes. And the most important side, maybe.
Yes, where we actually understand how this building was used, and yes.
I would like to thank you very much for this interview, and I hope this TV broadcast create an effect and we get a result in a positive way. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I thank you too for giving me the opportunity to talk about this building. I think it's an important building, and more generally it's important to make people aware that this traditional vernacular architecture is worth saving and documenting. Thank you.
Mimarca programı Mimarlar Odası'nın katkılarıyla yayınlanmıştır.